Hey everybody, welcome. Brian Boone. Nice to have you here, pal. Yeah, let's just wait a few minutes and see if anybody else is going to join. This is the first one, so it was put out a matter of 24 hours ago and this morning. So just inviting us onto this platform so that we can discuss, or at least, it's a discussion through the live chat, and so it does rely a bit on some chat interaction and some questions, but then I can share with you my experience or perspective, which we realize is only one perspective. Um, so that's the idea, but I'll explain more as we get going. And again, this is our first one, so thanks for joining me. Hey, so if you are on, it would be very helpful if you say hello in the YouTube comments there. So on the video, I want to make sure that everybody has access to the live chat function. I think you'll have to be doing this from a device. You could watch it from your TV, but I think having the device, you'll have access to be able to type into the chat section on the video. So, and just go ahead and say hi if you're on and you're here, and then we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Hi, Kate. Thanks for joining us. I think Michelle said she was going to try to log on as well, so hopefully everybody's got the link, and then it's easy enough to see the video or just listen along in the background, whichever you prefer. And again, this can be as interactive as you'd like to make it, utilizing the live chat. Um, Hi, Megan. Good afternoon. Yes, I know who you are, and thank you for being here. I love sharing all the practices with you guys, and I know this is, I've always thought yoga instructors, we pretty much, get into the room for an hour and we talk to ourselves, but this is a totally different layer of talking to yourself. But still, it's not quite talking to yourself, because when we're doing the classes, I can certainly feel the energy of you guys breathing. I can feel myself breathing. I could feel us connecting. So I've never been one to really, get on with a camera and record something when there's no other energy involved, because I think the muse, if you will, the muse is or are the people that are sharing the experience, the nonverbal way that we can all communicate with one another through breath, through movement. We're showing ourselves ultimately a lot of vulnerability when we're not talking. Certainly feeling everything that's going on inside during the practice and in the poses, but then not saying anything about it. Really having this internal dialogue and conversation so that we can see what our mind is doing and how our mind works. So these are just things that roll through my mind, which over time has developed into what I've, we don't even have to label it. It's just philosophy, but I've tagged in the front of that yoga life philosophy. And to give you all a background about that, um, before I started practicing yoga, obviously we're living life. We're all living life, whether we're practicing yoga or not. And getting into the yoga practice and really created quite a shift for me in my perspective, not only in how I saw the world, but also through the perception of how I viewed myself. And so getting to know and feel the five senses of my body when I'm in poses and when I'm in breath. And trust me, when I first started practicing, I don't even think I could recognize the breath or it even being there, you know, 9/10 of the time, because I was just so overwhelmed by the tightness of my body and trying to move through the positions. It's like, well, yeah, you're still breathing, but it really didn't kind of move over and transition to this breath awareness, I'd say, for at least a year. It takes a lot to go through that. So through the course of that, obviously there's lots of moments and to reflect and to see, you know, kind of the different ways that you would view the world or the ways that you would view yourself. And so in doing that, and I think reflection is a very important component, instead of just moving through life and doing something else and doing something else, that we take moments to reflect. And through that reflection is where I was able to see that there is actually philosophy that was being birthed, or in something that never gives you, you know, philosophy, it doesn't give you an answer. If you listen to one of Brian and I's favorite, Alan Watts, you know, they're not giving us answers and for what to do in our life or what step to take next, or, you know, here's the list of instructions. It's putting something in front of you that ultimately is so abstract, and beautifully in that way, where you can develop your own principles and your own practice and find the ways that you relate to it. And even when you don't relate to something, and this is why when I'm teaching, the entire layer and the vocabulary and the words that I'm using, they're not meant for you to sit there and just soak them up and be like, oh, he's so right, he's so right, he's so right, you know. Sometimes I say things and would anticipate that in your mind you'd be like, he's crazy, that makes absolutely no sense, or what does that mean? That's the point. And so it's not a instructional vocabulary that says do this and go down this path and then you'll be enlightened or you'll be awakened. It's to let these things bounce off of you, like ping off of you, like a cell phone and signal hitting a tower. It pings and then it provides the signal coming back, and that's all that it's doing. And so we're just pinging the brain, and a lot of times we're pinging ourselves, you know, in the ways that we view the world or the ways that we, you know, have identified ourselves and within the stories and our experiences and what we've done in our life up to this point. And so that maybe in that moment of ping, or the combination of the breath and your practice and the people around you and your teacher, maybe you see things differently, but you don't have to. It's just all this abstract sense of maybe and perhaps. So there's a little bit of a background, and good news is, if, you know, we'll have this recorded so you could always go back and listen again. And, you know, if people aren't here at the top of the hour, then they can always go back and listen to it as well. So I would not like to just sit here and, you know, riff for an hour. I'd love to hear something from any of you and what you're thinking, what you're feeling. There's no question that isn't a good question, because I'm sure that a question you have is a question that somebody else has as well, and we'll all find in some relatability as we start to dig a little bit deeper and, you know, perhaps take the story off of it and get to the root and see what that is. So let's use the live chat here, and you know, go ahead and give me anything, food for thought, you know, anything specific, anything general, anything at all. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining us. So again, anything that you're feeling, anything that has come up for you in your practice lately, anything that has presented a contrast in your practice lately. You thought your practice was a certain way, and now it's feeling different. You're used to practicing hot yoga with us at the studio, yet finding in certain struggles or challenges not practicing in the heat, or vice versa. Maybe you found beautiful things, even though they're different, not being in the hot room. I was talking with Talia yesterday. I took her class at 4 o'clock. She's teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4. And we had a little discussion beforehand, just talking about how our bodies were feeling, and when we're in the studio, we're in the room sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a day. So that's a lot of additional heat that we're not in right now. So, all right, so working on my crow pose this morning, but I'm very afraid of falling forward. Is this a normal fear? Exactly, Megan. So these are things that I would love to use this platform for, and to be able to share with people that watch it now or people that watch it later. So, when you think about a specific pose, a lot of times when I'm doing a private with somebody, I'll ask them, and this is a very general open-ended question, but I'll say, what's your favorite pose right now? It doesn't have to be your favorite pose all time, but your favorite pose right now, and what's your least favorite pose right now? So just seeing where your mind's at in relation to the physical practice. And so when you're talking about poses, the mind will go into certain places, and they say that the energy of things that have happened in your life and will certainly impact the pose that you're in and when you're in it. So kind of breaking that down and taking it into crow pose. Right? There's a lot going on in crow pose. And I know on the surface a lot of times these things, even like down dog, seems like, oh, that should be a simple posture. It's not. For a lot of our bodies, especially here in the West and how we live our lives, and being in a car and a lot of time and tight hips and all of that, a lot of these poses aren't easy, and they do take time and to break down. And in that breaking down, we're basically taking what our body has done up to that point, whether you've been, you've played sports in your lives, or you sit at a desk for your job, or whatever these things might be. So much of what we're doing in the repetition of the practice is breaking down those layers of resistance, and so that we can actually access the breath to create the posture. So with crow pose in particular, it's an arm balance. So when you talk about putting your entire weight onto your hands versus what you're normally used to of putting your entire body weight into your feet, you're basically turning the hourglass of time upside down. You're flipping your perspective 180 degrees. So just in the simple sense and the proportions of your body, right? What's bigger, your legs or your arms? Your legs are bigger than your arms. Your feet are bigger than your hands. And so in that reduction of surface area, and that you're going to be asking yourself to not only come into, but then place weight into, and then beyond putting weight into it, then balancing in it. So you can see some of the complexity in just what your mind is used to doing in versus what you're asking it to do in a pose like crow. So you talk about fear and crow. Well, what's the thing and that we try to guard at all costs, right? If I were to take a rock and I was going to throw it at you, the first thing you would do is cross your arms or do something or move your head out of the way. So that's an instinct. So a natural instinct that we're all born with is, I don't want something to hit me in the face. So when you're in crow, you've reduced the surface area by putting all of the weight into your hands. You're using muscles that are much smaller in your arms versus your legs. And then you're bringing your weight forward. You're taking your feet off of the ground. So what's the most vulnerable thing? And then is now sitting between you and the floor is your head, right? Not only your head, but the front of your face and your nose. So that is a very normal thing. This isn't fear, like, I'm scared when something traumatic is going on around me, right? It's not that sympathetic fight or flight, there's an attack that is happening, that type of fear. It's not that type of fear, right? But it's innately built into us, and that we have these layers to protect and to guard. And so that's mostly what you're experiencing when you're trying to come in and you're working on crow. Now, some things that you can do as you break down those layers that have built up into why that is there, or why that might be there in addition to what's already there for everybody, is give yourself some props to support you. So getting your hips and to come up over your elbows, that's the first step. And to do that, you just keep your feet on the ground, you elevate your hips, you have your palms in front of you, turning your elbows in with your knees above your elbows. Stay there. In so many cases, when people want to take momentum through the practice of yoga and try to get somewhere faster, rather than extracting the momentum, right? Take the rocking action out of it and stabilize yourself, and then give yourself some really deep breaths. And when you start to feel comfortable, the thing that's going to create the comfort and lessen that fear and from alarming you that you shouldn't go any further is the breath itself. So, crow is a pose where a lot of people stop breathing. They muscle their way into it. I know I did for a long time. And in that is this philosophy of the yoga life. It's like, if I'm muscling it in this practice, then what am I also white knuckling in the experience of my life? And so by learning and to muscle it less, to let go of the grip so hard, to let that breath come through a stressful or moderately fearful situation, now you're going to start to rewire the brain, reprogram the mind, and then little by little, and you'll know it when you know it. That's the thing. The breath will bring you in, the breath will bring you out. You'll be like, shit, I just did the crow. Okay, so deepen the breaths, set the body in the right alignment, and then you'll know it when you know it, and when the breath is there to support you, right? In this case, lifting the feet off the ground, putting the weight into the hands. Anytime we're going to lift the body up, okay, what creates the lightness is the ability to exhale the air through your nose, keep your lips sealed, and contract, right, the bigger muscles that make up the core of your body, which is your belly. You've heard me say this in class, but now that we're not practicing, you might hear it better. Your belly, your upper back, and your legs down to your thighs. Okay, it's a really good question, and I hope some of that helps. All right, Bezari, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for joining us. It's my first time doing yoga. I'm very happy, and I try to do the whole class, but I know that everything is a process. So that wasn't a question, but that's a statement, and I'm going to actually use that. First time doing yoga. Like, what an incredible opportunity, and I'm so grateful that we get to share it together. The thing that typically goes on in the first, there's really no timeline. You hear me talk a lot in the classes about letting go of time. And the first part of that is you allowing me to guide you for an hour. I'm basically taking time off the table, and I'm holding you in a container of space. You know how sometimes you're in a class and it goes by so fast? You're like, whoa, how was that an hour? And sometimes you're in a practice, and depending on what's going on, it feels like that hour was 3 hours. It's going on so slowly. So these things you really can't control. But the cool thing about starting a practice is that there's so many moments of light flashing in front of us. There's so many moments and that are awakening and through our breaths and through the positions and through this element of opening up our body a little bit. Think about something that is just jammed together. It's closed tight. The door is shut, right? What's going to get through that door? Nothing. The door is shut. And so starting a practice is like taking the door handle, turning it a little bit, and then just opening up so there's a crack. And so once you create the crack, now you can start to broaden that space more and more and more with repetition and consistency. It's really great. I love seeing you in the classes, and the more regular, the more consistent that we can be with our practice. I think it sets us up in this philosophy to really discover the expansion of our center. And our center is that place when we know where we exist. We don't know where everything else exists. We don't know what's coming at us next. We don't know who's going to throw a curveball or who's going to say something. But what we get to know is that expansion of our center. And so that as these abstract things or these variables show up around us, then we can ultimately sustain our calm a little bit longer. It doesn't mean that you're not going to lose your shit. I lose my shit. We all lose our shit. But when you lose your shit, you're going to be like, identify it, and then in a much shorter term, you're going to know what it means to come back to your center versus existing in that spiral or that reaction, right, or that loss of your center where it kind of takes you out a little bit. And so the physical practice and the breath, of course, is really beneficial for that. So thank you. Hi, Terry. Welcome. Hi, Sherry from Vegas. Thanks, you guys, for joining us. Derek has shared, I hope it's okay, but he was saying that you guys have been enjoying the detox practices, and I know that you've been doing the flow practices as well. So just a little breakdown, if you will, between the types of classes that we're offering right now. We've got the vinyasa practice and the flow-based practice in the mornings, and if you've done them, you've seen that there's a rigor to them. There's definitely a pace that can be challenging at times, and so I encourage you to always listen to your body, but it's kind of built to get that blood pumping, to get your heart beating, and there's going to be moments where you lose your breath, but over time and as you continue to deepen your practice, it's a matter of sustaining the connection and the relationship into the breath for as long as you possibly can. So I'm not one, this is part of the philosophy, but I'm not one to believe in leveling yoga classes. I'll just keep it at yoga classes for now. Inherently as humans, if somebody tells us, this is level 1, this is level 2, this is level 3, we're probably going to slide ourselves into the wrong place because a lot of that diagnostic is coming from our ego or what we think we are versus what we actually are, and there's just a simple lack of information. Like if I was going to try to respond in a field where I haven't really deepened my study, how would I know where to put myself? So, for me, the depth of the practice is really correlated into how long you can sustain the focus on your breath. So it's not necessarily the type of class that you're doing or who you're doing the class with, because there's going to be opportunities to be challenged, and there's going to be opportunities to rest in peace. And with any teacher that you're taking from, there should be. But really how long you can sustain that focus. And so we've been doing hour classes. If I were to take you into a 75-minute practice, I would be asking you to sustain your focus and for a longer period of time, right? There will be a requirement and more demand physically because your muscles will have to endure, but all of that would come for you if you were sustaining your breath. See, so the breath is drawing the oxygen into your body, into your lungs, and breaking it down into your blood and then giving it to your muscles. So if you're breathing, you're going to be okay. I tell people if you can sustain your focus on your breath, we could practice for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Like your body would literally be able to show up for you. Eventually you'd hit a point of exhaustion and fatigue for sure, we all would, but it would go on much longer than you might think it would. And that's a really cool thing. A lot of times we surprise ourselves in really underestimating ourselves, not knowing, but it's that breath, it's the relationship and to the prana. When I say prana, it's this air that I'm taking in right now is broken down, and like I was saying, the oxygen supplies my body with life. If I don't have the air, I can't break the oxygen out of it, and none of it works. So deepening the practice, not necessarily what type of class it is, but the sustainability and the focus of moving from the breath and for a longer period of time. So when you're first starting, if your focus and your breath sustains for 20 minutes, that's incredible, right? Don't count yourself out. If you lose your breath, you've made it 20 minutes, that's amazing. Most people can't sit still and focus on their breath for a minute. So that's what we're attempting to improve, and then it could be 5 minutes. Now, we're giving ourselves something to do, being that this is a physical practice. So a lot of times with yoga, what gets people to come into the practice is this idea that I'm going to work out, that I'm going to physically form and work myself out and feel good afterwards. And then in that, we're sliding this is really deep and is really intense of a focus on breathing, even though all you're listening to is like, wow, this teacher just keeps saying inhale and exhale. We say it, on average in an hour class, you're going to get about 600 breath cycles. And so the average person is taking a 3-second inhale and a 3-second exhale, right? That's 6 seconds. And to take one breath cycle, that's 10 breaths every minute for an hour class. That's 600 breaths. So that's really where my focus lies, is getting you to take those 600 breaths with as much focus as you possibly can, right? And then building the endurance in the focus of the breath, and you'll see these incredible layered results in coming through transformation in your body, and transformation in your perspective and what you see outside, transformation in the perception and how you feel the world, the reality of the world based on your 5 senses. That's what makes something real, right? And it's only real if you believe that it's real. So yeah, really, really cool. Thank you guys for kind of stimulating this, because again, this isn't me just talking on a video. This is so much about interacting with what you guys are feeling and how you guys are going with your practice right now. Oh, thank you, Kate. Really appreciate it too. I love practicing with all of you. Okay, Kate says, I feel like the final position on the mat is honestly the most peaceful, conscious rest I have these days, and it's helping me tremendously. So when we talk about the final position, there's a lot of positions. Fixed sequence yoga has kind of marked a certain number of positions that you'll go through in a practice. And what we're doing, helicopter, what we're doing and how I'm guiding you guys through the experience, this may make a little bit more sense now that we're talking a little bit more about the philosophy. I'm really guiding you one breath at a time. So there could be 40 positions one day, there could be 60 positions in a practice, there could be 50 positions in a practice. There's no exact delineation around how many poses you're going to do in a practice, at least when I'm guiding you, because what I'm doing is I'm getting you to exist in this 6-second bubble, right? Now that is a measurement of time, and we're using that and so that our minds can understand and kind of the basis and the foundation first. So if you're taking a 3-second inhale, a 3-second exhale, okay, all I'm doing is trying to guide you and to understand that 6-second bubble and to exist in that breath. And when you bring the breath first, and then you get the following instruction and to move your body in a certain way, so it could be inhale, reach your arms over your head. Exhale, bring your hands together in front of your heart, right? So notice you're existing in that 6-second bubble of time inside of that breath, and your body is going to receive what it needs and to move itself around on a mat. Being at home can be quite challenging to stay on the mat, right? When I have you in the studio, the heat is a great layer to help you focus. It can also be a great layer to challenge you in your practice, but it does help us focus because the relationship of our breath with our body is then also in the relationship into the beat of our heart. So if our breaths are slower, then our heart rate and our pulse is going to be slower and our mind is going to be calmer. If our breaths are shorter, then our heartbeat is going to be faster, and then our mind is probably going to dart around a lot more. So again, getting you to exist in that 6-second bubble of breath, okay, will slow down the body, slow down the heart rate, and then therefore slow down the mind. And so this may not happen, as Kate was saying, this may not happen when you start even the first 10 minutes of a practice, 15 minutes. Where's my head at? Why is my head over there? Why is my head over there? It's totally fine. Keep breathing. That's again why I'm telling you to breathe about 600 times every single class. Keep breathing, because you never know, just like what we're living in right now, you never know when that one breath that you take and the mind starts to draw towards it, now you start to build this exponential, right, beneficial effect into linking to the next breath. So I play this little game that is, how many breaths with focus can I link together? It's a chain. And so it's like that old phone, the Nokia, the old blue Nokia phone. dating myself a little bit, but there is a little game on there that's Snake, and it's basically saying you could play this game Snake, and then you could always advance and try to do better on the next round, and try to do better on the next round, and try to do better. So this isn't competing with anything outside of yourself. This is another part of the philosophy. So, a lot of us are conditioned and to compete with people around us, playing sports, and that can be a little bit turbulent at times, right? We get into competition and we're trying to beat that person or we're trying to beat that team. And so what I've learned over time is the ability, because I grew up and I played football for a long time and I played team sports pretty much my whole life, and there's a really strong external force of competition, and that would drive me through a lot of things in my life, being better than. And so when you get into yoga, you're like, what is this better than? It doesn't mean anything anymore. So yoga sometimes will take this concept that you've been operating under and it'll start to kind of shatter it apart. So you can understand the shattering sometimes shakes people's foundation. And so when these things happen or you become uneased by the practice, know that that is the importance of having your teacher, right? Of having your yoga buddy that you can talk to, of having somebody that you can go and take a class with and share things with, So as these things come up, they're not meant to just kind of spiral around you and confuse you. Yes, you can sit with them, but a lot of times you'll find that relatability in connecting or expressing them to somebody else. So let's see what else we got here. Waki, what's up, pal? Oh, let me just finish on the final pose. All of that stuff, right, is going down. You're existing in the 6-second bubble of the breath, right? That's where the focus lies. And so you're breaking it all down so that you have the opportunity to get to that last pose in the practice, and where we lie down. It's called Shavasana. It's translated as corpse pose. When you're in corpse pose, the idea is that your attachments to the physical world around you and can lessen or completely release. Now, this is only something, and just like meditation, in that you can invest or investigate inside of yourself. Nobody can tell you from the outside what that might look like or what that might feel like. So, and to me, it's the most exciting part of the journey. And to our society, one that is very impatient, as we're seeing, very impatient and very success and goal-driven, right? In goal-driven society, you get to the end of the class, right? You hit that last pose and you just say, I'm done, right? Maximize my time, get to the shower, get to my car, go on to the next thing, jam on productivity. Well, in this case, it's the opposite, right? So when you start seeing Shavasana and corpse pose as that final part of that experience, the one that opens up and to lessen or to completely release the attachments that you may have to the physical world. And you may find that you want to exist there a little bit longer, especially now. So as Kate was saying, it's a very peaceful place. It doesn't change anything that's going on around us. It doesn't change the problems that we're facing in the world. It doesn't fix, right, the problems you may have in a relationship, or it doesn't do any of that. It's not this master key because it doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. It's going inside of you. It's allowing you to feel what that's like and to release those attachments. And then from there, okay, you are gifted this. If I could hold space, I can't. I'm holding space right now because we're existing in space. And so it's really getting inside of yourself and exploring through your curiosity, what does that expansion of space feel like? People will call it so many different things. Enlightenment, awakening, love, compassion. So give yourself that opportunity. It's being given to you. It's not even something you have to get into your mind and say, I must do this. Surrender is a good word when you get to that part of the practice. And especially now that we're at home, nobody's rushing into a shower. I know you may have other things pulling at you, or kids, or, so be it. And let that be a part of the opportunity and a part of the gift. So sometimes I'll practice and I'll lie down. My son, he'll come back in the garden here and, he'll want to run all over me. Well, here's the practice. Stay still. keep your eyes closed. Right? If he wants to talk, let him talk. If he wants to jump on me, let him jump on me without any reaction. If he wants to come and lay down on me, this is now the energy that we're spawning. This is the calmness and that we're sharing in with everybody that we'll come in contact with after a practice. Okay? It's a really good point. Walkie back tenny pose upside down, headstand, handstand. Why are they so hard and for him to get? And after 2 years, I'm still losing balance so easily. So when you're talking about going upside down, again, putting and distributing your weight into a much smaller surface area, right? Physically in alignment base, this is just going to be a trickier endeavor than what you're used to. So that's step one. Okay? As far as getting into headstands and handstands, now let's be clear, a handstand is actually designed to be safer than a headstand. Because if we go back to crow, and the thing that we innately fear is landing and crushing anything on our face. We're going to protect it at all costs. So a headstand requires us to put our head down on the ground and support ourselves, right, with our upper back and to keep our shoulders away from the ears. So if you're not seasoned in this activation and kind of way to lift up when you're inverted, then I would never advise starting a headstand practice on your own or without, personal or in-person guidance, because putting weight into your neck would not end up being a great thing. So you never want your curiosity or your passion for yoga poses to really outweigh that common sense in support of building more space, because there are ways that you can end up compressing and gripping and creating, kind of damming your body in certain ways. So there will be things that happen when you continue to deepen your expressions. You're going to feel wrists, you're going to feel shoulder. That stuff is part of the breaking down process. But these ways of I know that I'm putting weight into my neck. We don't want to do that. So handstand would be a safer alternative. Now, when you're getting into these poses, you find that a lot of people, when they first start out, including myself, it was all muscle, it was all momentum. So these are two things that we want to start to change our perspective on when we're practicing. Okay? This isn't the gym, so we don't want to be muscling ourselves. We want to use our muscles as a way to contain the experience of our body and to create lightness around our joints. And I could talk more about that. And we want to use our breath versus momentum and to take us in and out of positions in any transition. And then when you're in the position, the breath is really what keeps you focused in that position. So deepening the breath, slowing down the exhale. And when you talk about slowing down the exhale, that's going to give you much more space to find your balance, and it's going to give you much more space and clarity of your mind. So you don't want to be trying to come into an inversion not breathing, and your mind will actually kind of black out for a second if you do that. You won't know how you got from point A to point B. So with breath, okay, lessening that element of muscling your way into it, we got to find the alignment. We got to find and develop the space. So when we're guiding inversions through a class, everything that you're doing up to that point, so even if you don't end up doing an inversion in a class, you could be preparing your body for an inversion later down the road. But in a class specifically, everything that's being done is creating space in certain parts of your body, and so that opportunity can be offered and then perhaps realized. So going upside down without using momentum, without kicking your legs up into the wall, right, takes a tremendous amount of opening in your shoulders, right? Put your hands down for a handstand. You got to have the shoulders, okay, open. You got to have the back strong. And then this entire back body chain. So let's say, for example, you're having a hard time even when you're in a forward fold, right? Your hamstrings are so tight. Well, then you're not likely to be the one without muscling it, without momentum, and to come into a handstand. So every time, this is something that, again, through the philosophy, the yoga life, and realization and reflection, I had this epiphany where it was like, my hamstrings are still so tight. Had been practicing for years, and my hamstrings were tight. Well, the honest truth was when I got into the forward fold positions in classes, I was so exhausted because I wasn't breathing that therefore that just became a place for me to try to catch my breath, right? Or to take a break, or to act like I was pulling on my toes when I really wasn't. And so I really wasn't making any progress in the opening of the back body. So realizing this, right? What does this mean in the world? Directly, really not much. Indirectly, teaches you so much about yourself and how you engage things in the world. So I set this course, and it helps me sometimes to dedicate a focus, not for a week, not for a month. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but sometimes I dedicate a focus for a year. And the hamstrings and the back body were one of those things. I said, I'm not going to take off, right, any opportunity to stretch my hamstrings in any practice. This wasn't me putting out a goal that I have to stretch my hamstrings every single day, because I wouldn't show up for that. I wouldn't get out of bed, lie down on the floor, and stretch my hamstrings for 20 minutes before I started my day. I just said, whenever I'm in a yoga class, because it's something that I really like to do, that I'm not going to take off those moments. I'm going to keep breathing, and I'm going to dedicate my mind and focus on the sensations in my hamstrings for a year. And I did it, and then what I saw and what was revealed is that the body started to open up the opportunity and to do some of these things, these poses and these expressions that I saw pictures of, but my body just wasn't working that way. So I'm still working myself through that process and transformation. And you know, the beauty of yoga is like, where it goes, nobody knows. How far it goes, nobody knows. But with the breath, it creates and holds this pocket in practice called mindfulness, into where you're really not damning yourself, you're only supporting yourself in deepening the layers in the relationship that you have. So, you know, I would say go on that journey, you know, continue to open up the back body, take the element of muscling it out, let the breath come in, and slow down. Don't work these poses and transitions with momentum. Take them for what they're worth. Get used to putting your weight into your hands and feeling that smaller surface area, turning your elbows in, strengthening your upper back, drawing the core in, using your legs, and on an exhale, and you start to come up. So my basis, and this isn't, you know, who knows what is right, what is wrong. You just got to find what ultimately develops you and what your breath and what your mind can really focus on. So for me, the practice of going upside down started with crow. So it's really cool that you guys brought up crow and you brought up headstands and handstands. So my progression of going upside down was crow. And this from like day one, because crow is a pretty accessible thing that we think we can do, but a lot of times it's like, man, I can't do that. Why can't I do that? So crow's a really good one to start with. And then my practice of evolving to a handstand was from crow, and to get my knees to lift up my arms and to get my legs to go up towards the sky. And this is years and years and years and years of working on that. For my body, this took place because of the tightness in my shoulders. So I didn't even realize. I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on opening up my hamstrings for a year. In that time, still hadn't realized how tight my shoulders were, you know, possibly just the nature of my body, right? Contributions like playing football for 12 or 13 years and hitting stuff with my shoulders, so there's a lot of scar tissue. So I would say only in the last year to 2 years is where I realized, oh, I've neglected my shoulders and I need to open them in order for this practice to continue to open up. So for the last year, it's been more about the shoulders, and then I've started to see the expression of the postures develop and deepen. So again, that was years and years of practicing, right? Doing all the poses, feeling the shoulders in poses, but never really dedicating my focus, and probably taking it off a little bit when I got into those positions with my shoulders. Now I start to focus on my shoulder. It's like going around in the world and being like, I want to buy a house with a red door. Now, you haven't seen any houses with a red door, right? But you put that seed into your mind, I want to buy a house with a red door, and you start driving around and you're like, oh my God, there's a house with a red door. There's another one. There's another one. So play in that. Open the shoulders, open the hamstrings and the back body walking, and I bet you're going to see some of these things develop. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like the garden. Yes, come over for a barbecue for sure. So, little yoga life. We have about 15 more minutes. Little yoga life on the garden. So, what I'm sitting in right now, probably about, I don't know, 10 years ago, didn't exist. This was essentially a pad of grass that connected with the rest of the yard that's behind me. And at this time, I was dating my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, but we were dating, and we had, been dating for a while, and we moved in together, and life was happening, and it was exciting, and all of these things, and then I had this idea that I wanted to propose. So the reason why this garden exists is because it was the place that I proposed to my wife to. And I wanted to make it something special. And I knew that, well, I don't really know anything, but it appeared that we were going to exist in this physical location. We were going to live in this home together. This is before our son and everything that is part of our lives now in the studio. So I wanted to propose in a place that always reminded us that life isn't static, that life is dynamic, and that there's always something growing and there's always something changing. So I refer to it as the love garden, and I feel a lot of love when I'm back here. It's the basis of the expression. We have a little, flavor of nature when you come back here, but everything back here didn't exist 10 years ago, and we just planted. I planted the tiniest little grapevines, and I built this trellis, and now there's grapevines all over, and we get grapes every year in the planter boxes and the patio, and everything has been here. And so when life can get stressful, as it does, and even having a yoga studio, you have a business side to that yoga studio, and so there's things that you have to manage and things that you have to move through. I can easily have a place to come back to, and anytime I get my fingers in the dirt, anytime that I need to slow down even more from the practice into this practice off the mat with nature, I just come here, and it's been a beautiful blessing, especially during this time, to not only host some classes from here. I've been doing virtual privates from here, connecting with people, and it's just got such a special energy for me. So thank you for commenting on the garden. Danielle, I've been feeling so peaceful during your practice and just received feedback at work. That made me sad. How do I keep my mindset and that I've had during the last 30 days when life happens? The way that you do that is to let your mind do what it's doing. So you don't want to shut off your mind. You didn't have probably a whole bunch of control around the sad news that you received from work. So this information, as it comes to you, now becomes part of your yoga life experience. It becomes something that you may consciously invite to participate with you on your mat, because you're going to have to roll with it. In many ways, this is the essence of the flow. I talk a lot about there being one flow, and we're all just tapping into it when we get onto our mat. So we may exist. We're part of the flow, but our minds may not be there in that peaceful part of the flow. So let it come with you onto your mat, and so that you're not utilizing that space on your mat as a distraction. So the sooner you let it come with you, the sooner that you'll process it. And when I talk about the practice and present the yoga life philosophy, I talk about 4 layers that exist. If there's more, and you guys can think of more, please send them to me, but this is what I've thought of so far. The 4 layers are the physical layer, the mental layer, the emotional layer, and the spiritual layer. So in this case, right, that which strikes us the quickest is the emotional layer. The emotional layer is the roller coaster ride of our lives. Okay, rarely are we moving through life, right, on a flat ride. Okay? There's always going to be these little bumps in this roller coaster, and then sometimes there's going to be this big elevation, right? And we climb, and then there's going to be a big drop coming down the other side. We're on one of those big drops coming down the other side right now. Okay, so you have it on the macro level, right? The big scale. Every single person, almost 8 billion people in the world, right? We're all coming down, right? It's going down. Like if we are up, we are coming down. And then you have it on an independent and a personal level, your own roller coaster ride. And so if you bring it with you into your practice and you don't deny yourself and from, acknowledging that it exists, yeah, it might affect that roller coaster ride, right? And maybe this wave that was pretty big that came at you, when you start practicing with it, that wave becomes a little bit less, and then that wave becomes a little bit less. So the emotions and what strikes us emotionally, these are the quickest things to change. This is the low-hanging fruit. This is the stuff I can reach up on the garden, grab one of those passion fruits, and pull it off, right? It's going to go by quicker as you acknowledge it, take a breath with it, and then move on. And if it appears again and you still don't understand it, see, what you're doing is you're just cycling around whatever that stress is with the mind or the relationship that it's had or the impact that it's had on your perception of your life and your reality. You're just going to cycle with it in your practice, and you're going to go around as many times as you need to until eventually you break that pattern of the mind, right? You come to that moment in that intersection of clarity in where you can, it's never going to go away, but you can realize in kind of that moment in where you break through, now it doesn't attach itself any longer into your perspective. So now something, this is a great way to kind of wrap things up today, now something that may have been a really horrible moment in your life or something that you didn't see coming or something that didn't feel good, now when that pattern has been broken through your mind, you're no longer living in the stress of that story, now it becomes your teacher. That's all it does. It doesn't go away. It becomes your teacher. And it doesn't matter, people think, how long is that going to take? It may take a year to cycle around. We can't say how long it's going to take. It's just like what we're living in now. It may take 3 practices, but the guarantee is that that cycle will be broken in one breath cycle. That change will be realized. Any change will be realized in one breath cycle. So the more that you're giving yourself the opportunity and to connect to your breath and to be in a mindful space and a breath practice first, the more likely the opportunity that these cycles can be broken and that everything that happens in your life eventually will become your teacher. And hope that helps. Tanya K., one time you said, I can see all you going into arm balances at home. While you were doing down dog, knee to elbow, I've never seen arm balances there. Can you describe it or show it sometime? So, when I said that one day, we're in practice, and I think we're in a wide-legged forward fold, and I just know based on how we've conditioned a lot of the students at the studio is through the different types of classes, we'll basically offer, different types of postures. So like in a fit class, we'll take a lot of the flows and the up dog chaturanga movement out into, say, people's wrists and shoulders, and then in the flow practice, we'll add those chaturanga and up dog flows back in, and we'll pace you a little bit more in the vinyasa. And then in the power practice, we'll start to unveil the ability and the options with breath and to invert and do arm balances and to go upside down. So the reason I said that is there becomes this conditioned response. Once we know that we can do something, once we've built that confidence, like that's an incredible feeling to have. That's an incredible tool, right? Really more than a feeling. It's an incredible tool and that you can pull out of your toolbox, right? And kind of intuitively when you need it. And so you're teaching a fit class and you're not guiding people and to go upside down, but you put them in that setup position their mind goes, confidence. I know I can do this. And they put their hands down, they put their head down, and they take their legs up. And so that's just based on us conditioning those experiences without you guys really knowing, you know, why that's being offered then and not being offered then. Now maybe you know why. So that's why I said that in class. And then when, you know, we're working the knee to elbows from downward facing dog, you'll see sometimes when we get, it's not the knee to elbow, it's actually when you guide the knee to the shoulder and you're lifting the knee higher. So it's engaging, right, the outer glute and the glute med. So you're getting that knee to lift higher up towards your shoulder. Okay, now there's an opportunity. Your hands are on the ground, right? You come forward like you're doing a chaturanga. So your elbows come in, shoulder width apart. That knee is up by your shoulder. Now you just transfer the weight forward like you would in crow pose. Your gaze slides forward, and then your back leg is strong and the toes can lift off the ground. So yeah, we can definitely hit one of those up in the practice. It's funny you bring that up, Tanya, because I was almost going to do that in this morning's class. Okay. Anything else, you guys? I hope this has been it's our first one. So give me feedback, send me messages on Instagram, the Instagram accounts. Mine is at Yoga Life Joe K. The studio's is at Urban728Yoga. You can message me there. You can send me an email at joek@urban728yoga.com. I think something beautiful has been how people are sharing their experiences in this time. Getting messages and getting you know, all sorts of messages, things that people are feeling from people that I haven't ever really accessed that layer with. So the intent is that, you know, you would feel safe and to express, but when they're in the studio and there's other people around, maybe we don't feel comfortable, you know, asking a teacher or pulling them aside to talk in person. So I've really seen some beautiful ways of connecting and messages being sent back and forth during this time. So I really appreciate that and hope that you'll continue to share more. Wherever you might be sitting right now, can you find yourself a nice tall seat? And feel your feet on the ground or feel your bum on the ground. And bring your head above your heart and let your shoulders relax down. And close the eyes and let's observe a few rounds of breath here. Thank you all so much and for your beautiful questions and your comments and for sharing this experience this afternoon. I hope to see you all this evening and for a detox practice, and we can dive in a little bit deeper. And you have a beautiful afternoon, everybody. Namaste.